There needs to be, this is a very interesting conversation, and if we don't get assassinated, we probably need to go with other people.
I All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Houston Ensemble podcast. We're on episode 41, special episode 41 with the great Dr. Baxter Montgomery, a leading cardiologist here in the Houston Med Center, and somebody that I was able to meet a couple years ago at Rice University when we were doing the vegan festivals. And it's really an honor to have him here. He's got so much amazing information when it comes to health, the heart, plant-based living, raw veganism, all that good stuff. So, Dr. Montgomery, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. And it's always a pleasure to come and share information with the public. Information, education is really important. We're bombarded with lots of, information, quote unquote, on a day-to-day basis. And oftentimes that information is tailored for the purpose of commercial reasons and the like. And so when I'm talking to my patients, I always try to inform them of the best ways to improve their overall health. And so this is yet another opportunity using another venue. So thanks for having me. First and foremost, I'm from Houston, born and raised, from originally the Heights, and then moved to Acres Homes. So when I was 10, we moved. So, in fact, I lived on 6th Street. So if you're ever in the Heights area, it's Shepherd and 6th Street. Now it's like a commercial park. But just right there on 6th Street, maybe midway between Shepherd and Waverly, was the apartment complex I grew up in until I was 10 years old. And then we moved to Acres Home, where my sister currently resides in our family homestead. But I said all that to say that, my roots are here.
Nice.
And so it's been important to highlight that. Growing up in Houston, typical, young kid, high school at Eisenhower, did my undergrad at Rice and was a biochem major. At the ninth grade, I decided I wanted to go into medicine. And so the funny story behind that, I was in class and one of my classmates, named Bill Kessler, I'll mention it, said, "Oh, doctors make $90,000. I said, "Well, I want to make $90,000. And so I'll be a doctor too." So I never looked back from that point on. And I think God was just leading me through this path. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor. So I went to undergrad, was pre-med, went to medical school, UTMB in Galveston. At that point, between the summer between my first and second year, I did some research, oddly with a biochemist who also graduated from Rice. And he was doing work in myocardial preservation. And so we were doing things with mitochondria and looking at mitochondrial function and so on. And we worked with a cardiothoracic surgeon who had a lab next door. And so it was at that point in time I decided I wanted to become a cardiologist. And so, again, never looked back. The decision was made. So when I went to medical school, I was preparing for internal medicine. And then my second year of internal medicine, I decided that I wanted to subspecialize in an area called cardiac electrophysiology. So it was almost as though, I was being led down this path of going to where I'm now as a cardiologist, cardiac electrophysiologist, and had been in private practice for going on 24 years now. The early part of my practice, in private practice, I did the routine things. I saw patients in the office. I took an emergency room call. I was on staff at probably 11, 12 different hospitals around the city.
Wow.
As far north as Nacogdoches, I had some rounds there once, and had an office in I think Bay City, main office in Houston. So I was very busy working, seeing patients. I always had an interest in general health and wellness. Didn't know exactly what that meant, other than we were trained in our cardiology fellowship and cardiac rehab. Patients going and exercising, doing monitored exercise, being lectured on diet. But there was that interest there. As my practice grew, I saw patients. I implanted defibrillators. I did complex electrical procedures, coronary angiograms, and all of that stuff. Doing the best to take care of patients around the clock, long hours. However, I noticed despite the fact that our technology improved, the medications continue to, change and quote unquote improve, our patients got sicker over time.
Mm.
I noticed that I got sicker over time. And so a number of salient things came about in my practice. I remember once seeing a patient who came into the office, and he was taking a lot of supplements. And so, that's interesting. And of course, I knew about supplements, we all do. But, it was on a number of different things. And I said, well, where did you get them from? He said, it comes from a herbalist. So, my nurse practitioner and I went and visited the herbalist and just asked her questions about what she was doing. And so we got a little bit of insight into some alternative approaches. And I started reading books in the lay press and so on. And so that was my first, glimpse into things outside of, pharmacological medicine. As I read books in the lay press, everything you read about, this snake oil, that snake oil, they always talk about a healthy diet. And the cornerstone of a healthy diet was, fruits and vegetables and so on. So then I started reading about, fruits and vegetables only and said, okay, this is a diet that works for you as well. Another thing came about when my mom had taken ill. I also had an elevated LDL cholesterol, had some other health issues, and got on some different diets that was, caused weight loss and the like. But the LDL cholesterol didn't improve. When my mom had taken ill, I was helping take care of her. I did use some of the herbal supplements and things that made a little bit of a difference, but didn't really turn the needle around enough. She eventually died. But on her deathbed, in the process of her dying, I realized that, she eventually died of liver failure. Now, she went in the hospital for different things. She had coronary disease, diabetes, and all of these illnesses. However, she was on medications for them. And she was on the standard American diet, also labeled as the diabetic diet, but still the routine stuff. But she died of liver failure. And when I started reviewing her chart, about 10 of the medications she had taken were all metabolized through the liver. And her gastroenterologist didn't understand why she had liver failure. She didn't have hepatitis. She never had elevated liver enzymes. She just had liver cirrhosis at the end. Wow. So as I researched more and realized that, hey, the medications and likely the food she was eating, because I had read more information about dietary stuff, the preservatives, and so on and so forth. So this was a major eye-opener for me. Another salient thing happened where shortly after that, I come across this information on a raw vegan food prep course. So I took a crash course, became a certified raw vegan chef. This may be about close to a year after my mom had died. And so I had obtained a lot of information on that. A local guy, guru here, John Rose, who gave me information about juice feasting and eating raw, of course, eating raw foods, plant-based foods. So I did a 33-day juice feast. That was the most amazing that I had felt in 2 decades at the time. And so I realized that the magic of food was really central to, health. So I said, well, I can eat a vegan diet pretty easily. And I started eating regular vegan food. And over time, my diet waxed and waned because, there's vegan junk food, and I eat a lot of that. And then every year I'd do a juice feast, and I'd feel much different. And so I decided that, there's a spectrum of what's healthy and what's not healthy. I also started applying this to my patients. So I had very ill patients. I said, well, here, try eating these salads. Or one lady in particular, I remember, who came with, heart failure, had bypass and the like. And she was in a wheelchair, on oxygen, on 21 medications. And I was thinking for the first time, I said, well, I'm not going to add the 22nd medication. So I said, I'll tell you what, go home and juice for the next 10 days. They had a Jack LaLanne juicer, wrote out the recipes, sent them home. She came back, no oxygen, walking, talking, laughing, feeling much better, just 10 days. I was able to repeat this over and over and over without exception for people who complied. So as I kind of close out my initial statements, this was my entry into this whole phase where, I think God pushed me into this area where I'm this super specialist, well entrenched into the standard medical practice. But then I get this epiphany and say, wait a minute, it's not really here. It's over here. And I think that was all done by design because he wanted somebody with these credentials to be preaching this message. Yeah. And so that's where I am now. That's, I think.
That's amazing that you would say that because the past couple of days I've been taken a deep dive into the medical history of this nation
Mm-hmm.
and why the medical standards of today even came into place. Because we have to ask the question, modern medicine as we know it pretty much started early 19th century. The core structure of the medical system, American Medical Association, American Cancer Association, and their legacies and their descendants all stem from a core group of people. And at the top of that list is Johns Hopkins
Yeah.
and David Rockefeller
Rockefeller.
Foundation.
Yep. I
So
wanted to sell chemicals.
So he wanted to sell chemicals. What's so interesting is that all over the world, and particularly where industrialization was occurring in the 19th century, that would be America and the UK. We saw the use of chemicals in, for example, to deacidify milk so that we could prolong its shelf life. Or to make bread appear more fluffy and white. So we would use certain poisons that we thought were harmless. Turns out the people using the chemicals were trying to save a few cents, and they were poisoning the population knowingly.
That's right.
So there's a history of doing this for profit. And some of the oldest families in our nation have done that. And that's alarming because it puts into question what are all the assumptions we make about our medical system that we deem are, irrefutable, founded on pure science, et cetera,
Yeah.
and it's beginning it is beginning to appear more and more likely that a lot of it is just money interest.
Yeah, there's certainly the for-profit aspect of things is very clear and central to it, and all of our well, so I'll speak for the cardiology societies, American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology. We're just heavily supported by industry, drug and device industry. And there may be some food industry, components there as well. If you go to our meetings, you see the scientific exhibit booths. You have $1 million booths by these companies, and I go there and you look at the equipment they're selling, the drugs, and so on. The studies, that dictate our guidelines. Most of these studies are, funded by big industry and big pharma. And so, we participated in studies. For instance, there's a well-known heart failure drug that is on the market now, where we participated. It was a 5-year study, and we recruited patients, and they got the data. Once they've got significant data showing some difference in the previous drug, which, and again, neither treatment is very effective. It's just that one broken leg old lady racing another broken leg old lady, and so one wins. But long story short is, once the data was critically analyzed, they closed down the centers, got all the data, crunched the numbers, presented to the FDA. They also went to one of the leading medical journals, New England Journal, and of course they get these things published right away in time for the next meeting. It was presented at the next meeting. By the next year is in the guidelines. Correct. And so then the marketing team goes out and selling it. So it's really from the scientific aspect of it, down to selling it. But the problem with this, in the medications that I prescribe them, and patients can get some benefit from them. The problem is simply this: the best players are not allowed on the court. So if we said, okay, we're going to field the basketball team, and I get a couple of 5-year-old kids, and then a couple of old ladies out of the nursing home, and so maybe 3 old ladies out of the nursing home, a couple of 5-year-old kids, and say, okay, this is a basketball. This is we got all the best out of the nursing home, the best out of the 5-year-old group, and they're going to be our team. It's okay, see, and the evidence is that, these are the best ladies in the nursing home. These are the best 2 kids out of the nursery school or preschool, school. So they're going to be our team. The problem is, we got LeBron James and, maybe there's, when he was alive, Kobe Bryant and some of the superstars, they're not allowed to come and compete. So your best players are just based from a limited number of people, but the absolute best possible players, which is optimal lifestyle, is not allowed to be tested. And so the doctors, when we go through training, we're not educated, along these lines. And we don't know how to do a nutritional detox or a cleanse and these types of things, where these are, in my book, The Food Prescription for Better Health, I talk about how, it's not only eating plant-based, but how the food's prepared, how it's procured. And there's a lot of scientific evidence supporting, the benefits of these things. But there's little scientific investigation in these areas. There's little interest in educating along these lines. You just say, well, diet and exercise. And patients don't know what that means for the most part.
Right. And they think maybe that, a healthier diet might be getting the grilled chicken sandwich
That's
at
right.
Wendy's rather than the crispy chicken sandwich. And, that was you brought up what I was actually going to say. I think it's amazing to me that doctors are not given a rigorous course on nutrition in general, I think, to my knowledge, going through school.
Yeah, no, that's true. And my friend Colin Campbell, he talks about that, and oftentimes whenever I hear him say that, I'll say, well, I'm glad I didn't, because they probably would have taught me the wrong stuff.
Right.
It's I think it was in a way a blessing for me to have gone through medical school, not receiving any significant. We may have gotten a little bit of something. I don't remember. It was so short and small. I don't remember what it was, but not getting any significant amount of nutritional education, because then I'd rather have a blank slate than may have gotten several semesters and then come out with all the wrong information.
Yep.
And once they put MD behind your name, everything. It's hard to get much more information through. So,
do you find anything wrong with the traditional food pyramid?
Without, the thing is this, it's the main thing wrong, and I don't spend too much time thinking about it. That's why I'm sort of, pausing and hesitating on the answer, is because I just don't see it. I don't see it as being an effective way of looking at food. And so, the foundation is this and so on and so forth. But if I'm helping a patient, supporting a patient nutritionally, one, I'm going to say, okay, well, what are the optimal foods in general? and okay, those are plant foods, and the data supports that. I'm not going to get into that, but that's one. Two, then is it best to overly processed foods or under processed foods? And we all can agree that deep frying, battering, and over grilling things is going to destroy its architecture. So then you get to minimally processed whole plant foods are really optimal. And even and just for the audience who's out there who are keto fans or Mediterranean fans or paleo fans, let's just concede for a minute that there's some data that shows that someone who eats a paleo diet or someone who eats a Mediterranean diet or someone who eats a keto diet gets some kind of benefit. All of those diets have plant foods in them.
Right, yeah.
And the plant-only diet has plant foods in it. So we can kind of go to battle about which is better, so on and so forth. But the sine qua non of a healthy diet are plant foods. And that's borne out by everybody's argument, because their diets have plant foods, our diets have plant foods.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it the debate between what's best there, but at the very least, we know that plant foods is the foundation of any healthy diet. So then we all agree that plant foods have a very important component to it, and the less processed these plant foods, the better. So back to the pyramid issue. So when I'm evaluating a patient, I'm trying to decide on, okay, well, how best to nourish them. I know that minimally processed plant food is going to be best. And if someone has some inflammatory conditions, such as lupus or such as Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel, I know that those people have extreme amounts of inflammation, lots of oxidative stress. Their guts are probably not mature enough, so I'm going to have to give them foods that require the least amount of process. I may put them on cold pressed juicing and smoothies. Someone who is not as ill, Maybe they're young, they're relatively healthy, but they need to make a transition. I may put them on food level 0 to 6 that has raw as well as uncooked, but not fried, etc. So the point I'm making is that I don't know how one single pyramid speaks to all situations. And so when I'm thinking of how someone should be nourished, I'm looking at a lot of factors, and I'm looking at a lot of individual aspects of what's going on with that patient. And so I guess it's reasonable to have some structure, say, okay, these are important foods and so on. We use a food classification system that talks about the nature of the food, how it's prepared, how it's procured, because all of these things are important. If I grow potatoes in a field that has lots of toxic chemical waste, well, those potatoes are going to soak that up.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be very healthy.
Yeah.
And so it's not just that you're eating a potato, not eating a potato, or eating spinach or not eating spinach. What happens to that food before it gets into your mouth?
Where do you get your produce in town?
That's a great question. And it
I know it
opens
can be
up
hard
another-
too.
Well, I go to a number of, I'll just say out of convenience for me, I live not far from a Whole Food store, so I may get it from there. But we are working more toward getting produce from local growers and the like. And my thinking on this is in the process of evolution. But what we're trying to do at a restaurant, because the other part of that question is that we get it from distributors, because a lot of my food goes to a restaurant. Most of what I eat is from a restaurant. So we use Brothers distributors. There's some others we've used from time to time, and they get their food from other places, local, regional, national. So that's part of the variety. But what we're working to do is transition to work with local growers. We're going to try to grow some of our own things. We're going to try to grow a lot of our sprouts. And we're trying to develop a process that we can help replicate and teach our patients and other people in terms of, okay, how to procure your food. So I think we as a society or individuals need to think about how we're procuring our food.
Yep.
And so if you got a pot in the backyard or a backyard lot, you can put some seeds there and do that. You may not be able to grow everything, but grow something and start there. Get your sprouts, herbs, seasoning, and then look around and see, who's growing things in the area and maybe partake of some of that. So food procurement is a thing that I'm evolving. My thinking is evolving. We're trying to work on a thought process and I think other people are thinking along the same way.
Oh, absolutely. What alarms me at times is thinking about the industries that are involved in the procurement of seed and the manufacturing of seed and the usage of seed on farmlands. And that is a red flag for me, because I see that they are trying to, like with everything else, like you want to be the first guy on the railroads. You want to be the first guy, building any industry. So they want to basically eliminate an ancient practice of handing down seeds generation to generation amongst the people. And they're going to countries all over the world, and I know this because I have family in the Republic of Georgia. And these seed companies, Monsanto and the likes, have now come to my country, and they have started telling farmers what they can grow and how they can grow it.
Well, hopefully you can, after this recording, you can share with me how I can get a hold of some heirloom organic seeds from different places.
I hope that I can still do that. I honestly hope that I can still do that, because, and I, this is a conversation that I need to have with my family again, because it's like, in a couple of generations, I think that most of the seed in Georgia will probably be manufactured.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to capture what you can, because then maybe it can be regrown and then you can make more seeds from that. So, there's still the final bell hasn't gone off, and so we can still fight against this. And I think it's good that we're conscious about these things. And because, I'll have to say, it'll take me back 15, 20 years ago. And, this thought process, well, more, 20 years ago, I was starting to think about it 17 years ago when I got into this plant, whole environment. But certainly 20 years ago, my mind wasn't here. And I think those of us who are thinking of these things really need to look into that. I mean, there are a lot of economic people talking about, upcoming, market crashes and things like that, and having to grow your seeds and so on and so forth. And so, these basic elements of living. And we've gotten warnings. I mean, we had at the time of this recording, it's been, 4 weeks since the recent freeze here in the state of Texas. And, there was a big, a lot of power outages, some stores were closed, and so, there was a warning there. I think, when was it? Harvey came, and because I was stuck out of state sending my daughter to college, but I understand stores were closed for about 4 days. And so there was a lot of people were, really desperate for food. And it just shows how much we're dependent on, this commercial industry process of just feeding us on a day-to-day basis. Not to mention the fact that most people are eating processed foods, which I'm not sure if they're really foods. We should probably call them chemicals or drugs. But they only, serve an addiction. And so there's a withdrawal phase. So you go 24, 36 hours without them. And then, you go crazy. So, and that's when we see the looting and things like that. So it's a major issue that we're really dependent on, these supermarkets and super corporations. Yeah. And they can pull a string overnight.
Yeah.
Strings can be pulled overnight, some of the means. So, yeah.
Now, speaking to that, just real quick, I remember I have a couple friends, but one namely who loves to buy the, just like H-E-B or Kroger brand, absolute cheapest log of ground beef. That's just in that, it looks like the Toll House cookie dough log. And he was cooking it the other day. And I walked into the house and I said, oh my God, it smells like vomit in here. Like, it really smelled like vomit. And the fact that he was eating something that I was smelling that was like vomit, I was like, And we know what goes into all that. We've seen it.
I've heard and read they feed these animals. Some of these animals are fed rendered meat, which, the dead dog on the street, and who knows what else.
Oh, not only that. There's some like extremely complex chemical substances that they're using as preservative, but also in order to mimic the consistency of some of these foods. So, for example, in a lot of this boneless meat products, in order to maintain the consistency of the meat, because you have to ask the question, if they're removing the small bone structures out of the meat, how do you maintain the consistency of the meat? Well, it's literally an edible glue, similar to Elmer's glue, that they're injecting into the meat bits, so that when you detach the meat bits, it looks like you're having like little ligament slivers come off. But those ligament-looking slivers are glue substances.
Fascinating.
They're not organic fats.
And like we were talking about, that kind of goes.
I'd like to have a paper on that.
That kind of goes back to the pink slime stuff, which came about, a while ago. But another thing that I wanted to talk about regarding, kind of like keeping seeds or reproducing foods. Do you know that company, vegan company, Just, where they do like Just Egg?
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with the brand, yeah.
So, no, I think I don't even know what to think about Just Egg. I don't love it personally. I've had it, obviously. I think it's made out of mung beans. And you can do interesting things with mung beans, but once you start processing things, I get a little worried. But what they're doing, and they just put out a commercial on this, is they're taking a feather from a chicken and using its DNA to then synthesize a chicken nugget that is chicken, but without killing the chicken. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, so a lot of people are going to be like, well, they're not killing the chicken. It's just chicken, so it's totally fine. But
that's clearly the main goal of the marketing.
I don't want like a third-party piece of meat, like something that's been synthesized to that level. I don't think anybody should really be needing that.
No, it's pathetic to even suggest that we are so addicted to eating meat that now we should market laboratory grown meat just to stop these people from killing themselves or something. These poor guys who can't have their meat. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, you say you're not killing the chicken, but they're killing the eater of the meat. So and you mentioned the preservatives, and the preservatives preserve the food, it doesn't preserve the eater of the food. And certainly, and oftentimes, and this message probably goes out to the I guess the ethical vegans who may be okay with that. I'm not sure, but even from an ethical vegan standpoint, we have to be more than just ethical vegans from the standpoint of, well, it's okay as long as it's not an animal product, because how the food's prepared and adding preservatives to even vegan foods, whether it's just egg or whatever, it harms a human being who eats it. So that's not ethical. So there's some animal that's going to pay the price, even of any kind of poor food or suboptimal food, whether it's an animal product or non-animal product that's overly processed. And so we really have to be about optimal nutrition and pure foods for the purpose of, helping all the animals on the planet, the human animals and the other animals.
Yeah. And to go along with that, regarding preserving the human, not elongating their life, but literally preserving their body. There was a study that came out, I don't remember when, but it was a little while ago. They found that American soldiers, when they died on battlefield, lasted longer. Their bodies didn't decompose as fast as different soldiers because of all the preservatives in our food, aka kind of preserving our body. We got to find that. We got to find that. But I heard that a while ago.
At least there's that.
Our corpses last long.
Yeah, but Armin and I have really been talking about recently, with everything that's going on, like, we need to know how to garden.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I did take community garden at Rice with this guy, Dr. Joe Novak, and
Nice.
It's so liberating because we actually worked in the garden every day. We had to for our credit.
Oh, okay.
And so on the way,
Produce?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
all produce, and like kale, peas, carrots, cabbages, little broccolis, Brussels sprouts, and it was really liberating because I worked in the garden. I kind of had access to it all the time to maybe be walking to the servery and actually like grab some snap peas off of the trestle or whatever it's called, and then just eat them right there. And obviously we weren't using any like chemicals on the stuff.
Oh, wow.
And we're getting to that point where we really need it. And then to go along with the, synthetic meats and stuff, I'm going to be honest with you. I do love a Beyond hot dog. I've had it. It's great. But I try not to eat that really so much.
Sure.
And Armin and I were going through some stuff a couple weeks ago, and we learned that Bill Gates is now in the Beyond Meat sector, and he's funding it now. And I'm like, okay, time to leave.
Whenever I see that guy's name on anything, I'm out.
Yeah.
Let us have one good thing.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a moneymaker, and it's from the aspect of that they realize that people are looking at plant-based options, vegan options, and it's sort of a growing market. And so obviously, if you're having people trying to transition, you go there. However, when I'm evaluating my patients, and as well, is it okay to eat this processed meat or the other? I said no, and that's why we got into the restaurant business. And the things you're pointing out are really important because oftentimes people will make the change or try to make the change to eat a plant-based diet. A vegan diet is very good, and so they'll make an honest attempt, but without being informed of all the pitfalls of foods that are labeled vegan. They fall into that trap where I'm eating all these things and I'm not getting better. Or maybe I get a little better and it stopped, or whatever the case may be. And so what we do is we try to educate them along the way. However, when I started out, putting people on salads and writing recipes, and they would only go so far because over time you want to have a broader variety. You want to have foods that are familiar to what you're accustomed to. So we started doing nutritional boot camp classes that then educated. We gave recipes, and so it was start off with a 5-session, 4-week class, and we took them through a detox, and we gave them recipes and showed them how to prepare the food and so on. Took them to the grocery stores and all of those things, and they got benefit from that. However, over time, people said, "Well, this is great, but we want to buy the food from you because we don't have time to make it. And so then we got into the restaurant business. And so the Garden Kitchen was founded in June 22nd, 2010. And so, we have our own building, our medical facility. So we did some, remake of the building, put in a certified kitchen, commercial kitchen, a little cafe area. And so then we started preparing the food. So then we would design the food according to the food classification system. And so over time, we put them on meal plans. So then they can get the food from us. So someone comes for detox, and we would lecture them on what it's like to detox, et cetera. But they said, look, it's best to get the food. So they'd buy a month's worth of food. They would feel great. Then we try to get them through the process. Now we're in the phase of putting groceries. So we got a grocery plan. Because as they go to the grocery store, okay, well, what are you getting? What about this? What about this snack? And again, something with preservatives, or something with processed oils. So now we're in the process of working with, especially on more critically ill patients, but patients just generally want to do better. We're working on a program where they can get, everything through us, and our prices, we are a wholesale grocery store / restaurant. And so they can buy stuff from us just as like they can buy from other stores. However, ours restrict the things that they shouldn't eat. So I sort of jokingly say you can walk through our little market blindfold, just pull things off the shelf. It's going to be good for you. Yeah. And so that's the vision that we have going forward to sort of help procure food. We're working on shipping and the like. Probably in the next few weeks, maybe by the time we're airing of this video, we'll start to ship and things like that. The point is we're having to make food a cornerstone of our medical treatment. Yeah, do I admit patients to the hospital? Yes. Do I prescribe medications? Yes. Do I prescribe nutraceuticals and superfoods? Yes. All these are an adjunct. But we have a concept that at the foundation of the care of our patients is going to be the pharmaceuticals, then above that, nutraceuticals, and then the pharmaceuticals only as a last resort. Now, of course, other lifestyle things are in there. We teach grounding. We have an on-site exercise, fitness. We have a trainer combined to work with some of our patients. We teach grounding and fresh air. So all those things are part and parcel to the components of what we work with our patients on. But the food, as we found over the years, has been the cornerstone of getting people started in terms of changing their biochemistry and improving their overall physiology.
Is the restaurant open to general public?
Yes. Garden Kitchen Restaurant is open to the general public, so announce that to your audience.
And can you tell, we're going to go. I've actually been meaning to go ever since I heard about you, but I just kind of forgot until I got back in touch with you. Sure. Can you tell people who are listening where it is and best way to get there?
Sure. The address is 10480 Main Street, 77025.
Yeah, it's close.
Now, it's inside the Houston Cardiac Association medical building. So you drive up and say, you don't see a restaurant, you're going to see a medical building. Don't worry about it. Go to the front door of the medical building and say, I'm looking for the Garden Kitchen. They'll direct you right there because it's just right around the corner. So
cool.
It's within our medical building. So
is it open today?
It's open today.
Honestly, I might when we go out later, I might stop through.
I will say at the time of this recording, we are revamping our menu. We've got some new things that we're rolling out as we speak. We're revising our pizza. We have an almond flour pizza bread. It's heated up to 120 degrees with delicious pizza. We got a fettuccine Alfredo. There's some new things we're rolling out. But today, it's a good day to go. I'll give you suggestions on what to get, later on.
Great.
Recording, so yeah.
Wow. I wanted to say, you were talking about teaching grounding, teaching fresh air, breathing, sunlight. We're in a time when those things are being stifled because they're saying stay inside, don't breathe, cover all your breathing areas. Yeah. And what are you thinking about all that?
Well, I don't agree with those recommendations. I'll put it mildly.
Yeah.
And here's the bottom line. In all due respect to, public servants and people who are trying to look out for the best, of everyone's, well-being. What we know is that a healthy human frame is the foundation of health. End of story. Now, in that regard, let's kind of put whatever disease states aside and say the healthier the human frame, the better off you are. Whether you say, okay, I want to go and run a marathon, the healthier the human frame, the better you're running a marathon. I want to go and compete in the NFL. The healthier the human frame, the better. I want to, be healthy and happy and see my kids grow up. The healthier the human frame, the better you are. So that's the foundation of overall well-being, survival, etc. So we just kind of go through the bare essence of the fundamentals of, living life, having quality and survival. The healthier the human frame, the better. Now, if you want to talk about disease states, quote unquote, then you have to say the healthier the human frame, the better. If I have a patient that needs to have a surgical procedure, the surgeon is going to come and evaluate the patient. And they're going to ask me to say, okay, I want you to do a preoperative clearance for this patient to have surgery. My basic assessment of that patient is to say, well, the healthier the patient, the more likely to survive the surgery. A surgeon is not going to take a very unhealthy patient to surgery.
Right.
If you're very sick and very ill, it's like you're too high risk. So I just want to emphasize what undergirds health is the healthy human frame. So now we start to say, well, we have a pandemic. The same fundamentals apply. The healthy human frame is going to improve your chance to survive the pandemic. We know this. The people who are sick, older with comorbidities, and age is more associated with debilitation, not so much chronology. So we say older, then that's older because there's a correlation with older and debilitation in society because, everybody's on a standard lifestyle, and so older people are not generally healthy. But by and large, we know the data shows that the sicker you are, the more likely you're to succumb to this illness. The less sick you are, the less likely. So then that should be the foundation of our recommendations.
Right.
Let's, encourage people to do the things that improve their overall health. So what are those things? Healthy nutrition. We know that plant-based diet is the sine qua non of healthy nutrition. I don't care if you're paleo or whomever. All of these healthy diets have plant food. So the absolute foundation of plant food. So we can say, okay, consume a plant food only diet. Consume a diet that doesn't, have overly processed foods, overly processed plants, etc. We know that exercise is beneficial to the health. Moving, the blue zones, those are people always moving. They're outdoors. We know these things. So we should educate, encourage our people to do things that are fundamental to their overall health. That should be the foundation of the treatment of anything, whether it's coronavirus, COVID, COV-2, or any other coronavirus or anything. You need to fortify your human frame. And so that's where my thought process originate. And we could talk about treatments and vaccines or whatever, but that's the foundation.
I meant to ask you this a little bit ago. What is your stance on supplements, vitamins, all that stuff?
Yeah, they're meant to be supplemental. I try to use them more of a targeted fashion. Many people, patients will come and see me, and they've got all these supplements, and many of them over the counter, which not very quality supplements. The supplements we get from an institution that only sell to medical practitioners. The manufacturer that they use tests them, and then once they get it, they have it tested by an independent lab. So the purity in those things are tested. But even then, we use it in a targeted fashion. So if you have a certain disease state, and I know based on the clinical information, you have a lot of information on oxidative stress, then I'll put you on some nutraceuticals that helps bring that down in addition to a raw plant-based diet. Supplements should be used as a supplement, not as an end-all be-all. There are many individuals who are eating a terrible diet, come in with supplements, sort of like putting perfume on without taking a shower after you've been out, wrestling in the mud.
Yeah, good analogy.
It just doesn't, work that well. So that's our take on it. We even do blood urine tests to measure deficiencies in certain micronutrients intracellularly and also in the serum. To look at certain specific deficiencies, and we'll target those drugs. Oftentimes, people are deficient in things because their microbiome is off, and so the gut flora is abnormal. So we may recommend things to increase gut flora. B12 deficiency is common among people who eat animal proteins or don't eat animal proteins. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we live in a sanitary society, so we're washing our hands, a lot of antibiotics. The foods we eat are loaded with antibiotics. And so our gut flora, which we depend on to make B12, is probably deficient. The soil that we get our plant foods from are probably deficient. So there are a lot of factors that contribute to B12 deficiency. Similar with vitamin D deficiency, we're indoors most of the time, lack of fresh air and sunshine. So often we have to supplement these things. But, beyond that, most of the nutrition should come from foods. And I also like to say that optimal nutrition begins with what you remove from your diet more so than what you add to the diet. And so that's especially with many people who put in toxic substances in their body.
What do you have any opinions specifically on mushrooms, like fungi and stuff like that? Because I'm kind of into taking a mushroom supplement that has a lot of stuff.
Yeah, mushroom. A lot of people smarter than I am on this topic, recommend mushrooms as anti-cancer agents. Mushrooms are a good source of vitamin D. We use them in our recipes. One of our patients wanted something to mimic steak. We did him a marinated mushroom steak. So, we use it for a lot of reasons. And so it has nutritional value and beneficial. So we use mushrooms. I don't have any expertise in terms of what it, there's probably some anti-cancer benefits of mushrooms and other benefits, vitamin D and the like.
Yeah, I have kind of a acupuncturist here in town, and I don't go all the time, but I definitely have, and they grow all their own mushrooms as well as herbs and stuff like that, and they're from China, and
they sell them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a Chang. I can actually show you after this.
Okay, sure.
It's basically a 10 mushroom blend. I can't even name all of them, but obviously cordyceps. Yep. Actually, there's rhodiola in it, which is just an herb, not a mushroom. Mm-hmm. All these things, I can't remember it right now. But when I take it, you take like 2 spoonfuls of the dried ground mushroom a day. I really feel really good.
Interesting.
And have been.
And mix it with a smoothie or just?
You could, but honestly, I just straight into the mouth.
Is it
and
bitter?
Then water. It does not taste amazing, but there's cacao in it.
Okay.
And so it gives it like a little, and I think you tried it the other week.
Yeah, it's solid.
It's fine. It's not bad. But in general, I haven't been sick.
It's solid. Okay, that's a good.
I think honestly, some people might like it more than I do.
Sure.
But when I got sick 3 weeks ago, I had not been truly sick in 5 years. And I'd say I've been vegan for 5 years, maybe a little bit more now. Okay. And I didn't have my mushroom supplement. And I don't think I got COVID. I just think I had like a bad head cold.
Okay.
But I got back on it. Within 2 days, I was good to go. So
I'll look into it. Yeah.
Obviously, everything plays a part. Everything. But I was just curious about that in specifics. Regarding people getting sick right now with COVID and the testing and all that kind of stuff, what are you seeing regarding what the CDC says to do, what the World Health Organization says to do, whether they're saying, hey, get this or don't use this certain thing? And like I told you on the phone, we had Joe Verone on here who said, yeah, I use hydroxychloroquine, it works, especially early on before stuff gets serious. But then emergency use authorization means like they want to put down those other therapies to say we don't have any therapies that work right now, thus we have to make something and use an emergency use.
Yeah.
What are you seeing with all of it?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening and a lot of information, and there's a predominant push toward, testing and I mean, it's really, it reminds me of those, Jerry Lewis telethons. He used to come up with muscular dystrophy. I mean, it's like a huge push. Come on now, donate. I mean, there's a heavy campaign toward getting vaccinated. And, maybe, I mean, I don't want to say these people are not well-meaning, but what I will say is this. There are a number of experts around the world who say that, this isn't necessarily the right thing to do or the only thing to do. I'm blanking on his name, the guy from Europe,
Bosch.
Oh, yep.
We were just on that paper the other day.
Yeah, and someone of his credentials who is an expert, and I mean, I guess you can argue that he's as much of a pro want to use that kind of language as anyone, says it's a big mistake. What I'll say, as from the standpoint of my expertise in terms of treating patients as an internal medicine specialist, cardiology specialist, and the like, is the following. First and foremost, let's look at the disease state. The vast majority of people, certainly below the age of 60, probably going to argue below the age of 74, survive this thing, and greater than 90%, and 99.9% in the younger age group, and so on. So you have a very high survival rate of this disease state. The normal immune system is equipped to fight viruses, bacteria, etc. That's what it's there for. So a healthy individual, by definition, with a healthy, intact immune system, is immune to the virus, because you have an immune system, and that's what it's designed for. There's this discussion that you have to get a vaccine to have immunity is ridiculous. You have an immune system. What you're doing with a vaccine, for your audience members who may not understand it, you're taking a part of the biological agent, the virus, in this case the mRNA, a segment of the mRNA that codes for the spike protein. You're taking that, you're encapsulating in two cases a man-made device, and in other cases an attenuated virus, and introducing it to the body system so that you can make more spike protein and then make antibodies to that specific spike protein. Essentially, that's how your immune system works. When the coronavirus enters your body, there's a spike protein on the virus. And the body itself says, okay, I see you don't belong here. We're going to create a memory, and we're going to attack you and not let you invade. So that's the same thing that happens with infection. Now, what's the difference? There are a lot of difference that we don't understand. What Bosch talks about is that you give during a pandemic, and the mRNA that we're creating and implementing codes for a very specific, spike protein, alignment. And so viruses in nature, like people, don't all look exactly the same. I mean, you may be, let's say, for instance, you are one of 12 children, and maybe you're all boys. So you're one of 12 boys, and y'all grow up. And so your siblings, your 12 boys, you walk into a room, and someone looks across and says, okay, you guys are all brothers. You look alike. But you don't look exactly alike.
Right.
Somebody's nose is shaped a little different. Somebody's eyes is that and the other. Somebody's a little taller. But if you look at the boys, you say, okay, I recognize you all to be the Jones boys. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say later on, you come back and maybe a couple of you show up. You say, well, okay, Joe and Larry, you're part of the Jones boys because I saw you guys and you look just like the Jones boys.
Right.
But that's how the immune system sees. They see the spectrum across similarities.
Right.
But if you're given a vaccine, and this is my understanding of Bosch's argument, it's one of the arguments, you're coding for a very specific one. So you only recognize Bob Jones.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Jones, Ed Jones, Rick Jones, they all look different, but you're coding just for Bob Jones. So you recognize Bob Jones, you don't recognize the spectrum across the brothers. So if Bob Jones don't show up, but Eric Jones and Rick Jones show up, then it's like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know you guys, I only know this guy. Mm-hmm. And so the antibodies only coded, so mutants are not recognized. Mm-hmm. And you can even argue variations of the wild type may not be recognized. Mm-hmm. Because even within the wild type, there may be variation within the virus cluster. And so if in theory, you can potentially force the immune system to make many of these antibodies that only look for Eric Jones, and you'll suppress the inherent immune system's ability to make antibodies to recognize the spectrum. Mm-hmm. There's also talk about pathogenic autoimmunity that's been associated with vaccines. It was seen with the MERS and the SARS vaccines, which are also mRNA vaccines. They found that in the animal studies they did. They didn't do animal studies here, so that's a theoretical concern. And so there are theoretical concerns about it. We're also seeing in their reports of people who've been fully catching. There's been a report here in Houston, a nursing home. They get the vibe. Shortly after that, they still catch. They're not necessarily catching it from the. One, that's the evidence the vaccine hasn't protected them from catching it, and also it's possible that the vaccine may have suppressed their inherent immune system to where maybe they're catching a mutant or maybe they're catching some variation of the wild type that the vaccine doesn't protect against. So I think, as I alluded to earlier, the most important thing to do is to enhance people's overall health and therefore enhance their immune system and therefore improve their ability to fight it. That's not only a theoretical argument, that's how I practice and that's how I've been treating the patients that I've seen successfully in the outpatient setting.
If you remember when we were talking on the phone the other day, you were talking about remdesivir, and I'm blanking on a couple others that you mentioned, but can you talk about what you have done treating people that get sick with the...
Yeah, so there are a number of people, I don't mention their names or relationship to me, but there's a lady that contracted corona, became ill and started vomiting. She had gone to the emergency room and they tested and she confirmed positive. So we had started her on, we have an immune boosting supplement with quercetin and zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, and acetylcholine that predisposes to glutathione production. We started on that plus a grapefruit seed extract substance that has large antiviral effects, antibacterial effects as well. And then I put on cold pressed juices and I had it on raw food. I gave her one of our raw key lime pies and things like that so that she has something, just raw food to eat. So basically raw foods, those supplements and things, and in about 4 hours she was feeling better, and the next day she was almost back to normal. 2 days, it was all gone. So that's one situation. I've had other people I've treated in a very similar fashion who then turned around. If they have aches and pains, and they put on curcumin, reduce inflammation. So we treat systemically. Vitamin C helps in terms of reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammation. Of course, and zinc, has been shown can kill the virus.
Right.
Vitamin D, there's some evidence that has come out of one study, I think, showed that certain patients in the hospital, the ones who died all had a vitamin D level less than 30 with a lower limit of normal. So we do know that enhancing vitamin D and other supplements and nutrients can help. Plant-based diet. One of my patients had really bad heart failure and he's morbidly obese. We put him on a raw detox regimen. And during the time he was on a raw detox diet, I think he was probably maybe 5-6 weeks into it, he had contracted. And so I think he had been sick for a couple of days. He got over it. And what he told me was that, he had pneumonias in the past. That was the mildest pneumonia that he had ever contracted. Now, he was morbidly obese with heart failure. Now, his weight was going down, but he was still morbidly obese during the detox. The point is that in the context of optimal nutrition, despite being in a high-risk group, he actually did well with the virus to go to the hospital and so on.
Yeah.
So, and there are other examples we can make, but the point is that we've seen lots of evidence that what we currently do is our older patients who are at high risk, we put them on ivermectin as a prophylaxis to prevent, and then we can use it also therapeutically, and there's a lot of data on that's been published.
So it kind of seems like, and then Armin, I know you're pulling some stuff up, and we'll talk about that, but it just kind of seems like, based on what you're saying and based on what other people have said, including somebody like Joe Verone or Dr. Pam Popper, who we recently had, this thing able to be beaten with completely natural cures, treatments, therapies.
Yeah, starting by being healthy. I mean, I don't want to, I can't overemphasize, fresh fruits and vegetables, naturally raw plant-based diet, fresh air, sunshine. We teach our patients grounding, It's going to help you sleep better. You know, the sunlight into your pineal glands can help you sleep better, better sleep. All these things. I mean, these are just, I mean, it's, you know, we're talking about and mask and, you know, flatten the curve and be safe. I mean, that's fine. But, you know, really, this is just basic stuff.
Yeah.
And we need to get to the basics.
Yeah. Sometimes I worry too, just with even when I'm playing bass at a venue where I have to wear a mask, I really can't breathe through it. I'm not trying to like sound all annoying and stuff, but I really can't breathe, and it's hot, and I'm getting so much humidity in my mouth, and I can just automatically tell that that's no good for me, and I really can't imagine what it's like to be the people running outside with a full bandana on their mouth. It's tough.
Yeah, no, it's really problematic, and it's the you know we've during the state mandate we followed the mask guideline in our office, and we had signs up and whatnot. But when patients come in, if they need to take the mask off, I said take your mask off. I mean, it's not a we follow the recommendations, and when the governor removed the mandate, then we went optional for masks. So if you walk in our place, you'll see all my staff wear masks. All young people, they love wearing masks. It's fine.
It's a virtuous thing today.
Yeah.
So,
And so I'm not going to criticize everyone for doing it, but what I'm saying is that it's the things that we know help you are the things that there's an internal mask you need to wear, and that's your immune system, and that's going to be the stuff you put in your system. Now, if someone puts a plate of bad food in front of you, then I would recommend wearing a mask then. But beyond that, I think you are okay either way.
Yeah, and then Armin, you're good to go. Speaking of that, I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about what everybody's what the big companies are pushing and everything. Just the other day, for everybody who doesn't know, if you get your vaccine, you prove it with your card, you can get a free donut every day for the rest of the year from Krispy Kreme. And I love this beautiful picture of this woman holding up her card with like a big donut in her mouth, and I was like, that is USA Health. Amazing.
If that doesn't make you want to put your fist through the wall, I don't know what.
I don't know what.
that should. You know what? If let me think. Garden Kitchen or Green Seed Vegan said to me, "Hey, if you present your vaccination card, you can get a free meal here every day for the rest of the year." I would think about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they're not.
We're not.
Obviously.
We might say don't vaccinate and get a free. No, it's hard to really, come out and comment on that without using profanity. I mean, it's just beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think I guess there's fried chicken and maybe other foods, but donuts, if you had to list the poster child foods, if you will, of bad eating and bad health, donut is going to be somewhere high on that list.
Yeah, it's always at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, and so to reward we know that heart disease and diabetes and obesity contribute to poor survival, and we know that getting the doesn't absolutely protect you from coronavirus. Even the experts, the pro will tell you that it's not absolute protection.
Right.
And so then you say, okay, you get the and you're not absolutely protected, but we're going to give you a food that's going to increase your chance of dying from the you're not absolutely protected from.
Yeah.
And we're going to allow that. And as a government body, we're going to even say that's okay. Or we're not going to say it's not okay. And it just, it's I don't want to say it's puzzling because I know the underlying motivation.
Mm-hmm.
The problems that we have to then start to say, well, are they just after money or is there some other motive here? Because if somebody says, okay, if you drink the cyanide, then I'll put a bullet in your head. Well, I guess if You're going to make sure I'm dead if the cyanide doesn't get me.
Yeah.
If the get you the Krispy Kreme donut, I mean, that's 2 bullets.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know. It's just crazy in the sense that we tolerate this, and the public is okaying these things. I don't know. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
It is. It does
Yeah, it does.
It
Absolutely.
feels like all senses have escaped people, and there's a few alarming publications that I like to point to. One is the 2017 Johns Hopkins Hypothetical Pandemic Scenario Exercise paper, and it's titled the SPARS Pandemic.
Do you remember why they titled it that? Because I forgot when I was looking at that. I was like,
It's
SARS
based on
mixed.
SARS, yeah.
SARS and SPA.
obviously SARS,
Yeah.
but I was like,
SPA and SARS mixed.
okay.
And
Exercise, the health spa.
What is so
Send me that, by the way.
I would say
We will, yeah.
I would say scary. Oh, I'm gonna send
We
you.
actually have a lot of things that we'll need
I
to
have
send you.
more things than I should probably have.
You guys have really researched this stuff. Boy.
It's serious.
Nah,
It's
I
it's
understand.
painfully serious, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Should
later,
organize some kind of a forum at Rice. I mean, I don't know. You have
We had David Lebron on the podcast here
really?
months ago.
You asked him about the vaccine?
Yeah, a little bit.
Asking a person at the top of a bureaucratic system about something that is at the top of the bureaucratic state is very difficult.
It was hard,
I understand.
but we tried.
I would like to point to some of the most egregious and alarming aspects of the SPARS hypothetical paper. They go insofar as outlining in a roadmap fashion how the pandemic will be introduced, what the immediate public response will be, what the social media response will be, what the lawsuits after people accept the shot will look like, how to respond to the lawsuits on a government level, and what to do with the aftermath.
So, timeout. Lawsuits. Are they seriously anticipating lawsuits? I think
Yeah.
it seems like everybody's so snowed under that.
I think they are, and that was something that Pam
They're
Popper,
anticipating
she was talking
lawsuits
about.
within 8 to 12 months.
Interesting.
In the chapter about surgery, chapter 17. Of course, this is all hypothetical, right?
That's a book publication.
That is a Johns Hopkins publication about the response and scenario of a hypothetical pandemic.
I need to see that. And when was that published?
2017.
Amazing.
It is still on their website.
With a big old virus.
Yeah, download it before
Spiked
they take it.
virus.
Oh, I have it.
That's- Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, send that to me. That's interesting. And so the nature of but it's interesting that they're anticipating lawsuits because if you were to ask me without having mentioned that,
Yeah.
do I anticipate lawsuits? I would say no.
Mm.
Now, again, I mean, they're experts in this stuff, and the reason I say no, when I talk to people are so bamboozled by this. Now, there are some people who don't want to take it, and they're nervous about it. Some people who take it and they're nervous about it, so on and so forth. But so many people have drunk the Kool-Aid that I say, well, gosh, these guys are all, they're all zombies. And they're medical experts. I mean, it's like.
Can I say one thing
before?
Because I meant to say this as an important part, and then we can get right back to
Gotta
that.
fill up my drink a little bit.
The Kool-Aid.
The Kool-Aid.
And I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but it's very
Sure.
serious to me.
Sure.
Half of my family is black,
Uh-huh.
African American. Not sure.
Uh-huh.
I know different people like to be referred differently.
Sure.
And I've been thinking about this a lot.
Uh-huh.
And with all the research that I've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, let me think about it from that perspective a little bit more,
Uh-huh.
especially because it's close to me. The first time an article comes out a few months ago, it's about the first or whatever is being tested in Africa.
Mhm.
One of the first articles on the first tests.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, wow, this sounds familiar to me. When we're thinking about this and we're thinking about the black man,
Mm-hmm.
does that play a role in this with the history of medicine being tested on
Sure.
minority populations?
Yeah. Well, it's the testing, there are a lot of ways to break that down. There is So a big push to get the black community to take the vaccine. And so I don't know if I were the other guys, but I saw them pushing something in the black community here in the United States. I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to.
Right.
Wait a minute, there's some suspicion there. But no, the point is this: there's a big push in the black community. They're trying to get it in all communities, obviously, but there's a big push in the black community to take the vaccine.
Here in the United States, really, it's going to be black people who really should get it first, and many indigenous people.
I don't know what's on their mindset in that regard, but let me just kind of share some things with you. So, corona utilizes the ACE2 receptor to enter the lungs and enter tissue in general. We know, and this is based on some data I published when I was a cardiology fellow, there's other guys that published data that blacks, if you go to blacks in Africa who's never interracially married compared to blacks in the United States, we know that there's an increase in the DD genotype, which means that we have a higher expression of angiotensin activity in the serum and in the tissue. So what that means, higher angiotensin activity, which means we're stimulating ACE2 receptors, angiotensin receptors. To a greater extent, there's also publications showing that we have a lower amount of angiotensin receptor concentration than non-blacks. So that's one.
I need those as well.
I was also going to say,
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
and for everybody else, can you give us a very layman's conclusion of what you just said?
Sure. So basically, our biology and physiology works by interaction with molecules and things that are pseudo nerve endings called receptors. So like I walk through that door. To get in the door has to be open, has to be unlocked, etc. I got to fit through the door. So the simple aspect of receptor is sort of like a door inside a cell or a door across a membrane. And so for a molecule to get into that membrane, it's got to go through that door. And that receptor is like a door. So that's kind of the simplest way of thinking about it. Now, these doors are very specifically shaped and so on and so forth to accept certain molecules and not others and so on. So the ACE2 molecule is a specific type of molecule that's for certain, specific type of receptor, the ACE2 receptor, the specific type of receptor that accepts the ACE molecule, angiotensin enzyme molecule. And it carries out lots of biological functions, such as creating other molecules that cause blood vessels to dilate and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So the utilizes this receptor to get inside the cells. We know biologically people of African descent have higher angiotensin receptor activity, and as a corollary, they have lower receptors. The more the molecules hanging around, the lower the number of receptors you tend to have. The body responds as a correlation. Higher the molecule, the lower the receptor, because you need fewer receptors, so you have lower receptors.
But
so
you're
higher
saying
activity
in these
genetically.
populations, the angioceptin activity is higher.
The receptor activity is lower because the activity is
Receptor
higher.
activity.
So you have fewer
Okay,
receptors,
gotcha.
fewer doors.
Fewer doors.
So fewer doors for the CoV-2 virus to get in.
And that's good.
And so biologically, blacks are at lower risk. Now, you say, wait a minute. What about the data in Chicago and here? And they say blacks are dying at a higher rate. But what about, let me get to that in a minute. So we know biologically we should have a lower chance of dying from coronavirus. You see the whole continent of Africa, the incidence of death is much lower.
It's
Very
so low.
Extremely low. And so now I talked to a friend and colleague of mine, and she has friends in Africa, and she says that they're going to the local healers and getting herbs and things like that, so they're protecting themselves with other means. So there's some variables there, but anyway, that's one thing. They're generally healthier than blacks here in the United States, so that's one thing. Now, so why do we die higher? So a colleague of mine, Dr. Kim Williams, actually analyzed the death rates of blacks in Chicago, maybe some of the large city. And I got to look at that data some more, but he was on our show. We went through it. And he actually showed that if you control for diabetes, obesity, and other comorbidities, the hazard ratio of the risk of blacks for dying from was 0.79. That means there's a 21% lower risk compared to other groups of blacks here in the United States.
Mm.
That's consistent with the biology that we understand, that we have a lower angiotensin receptor enzyme density, and therefore the virus doesn't penetrate as effectively. So biologically, we should do better. What overrides that natural biology is our poor lifestyle, bad food, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
So that I want to start that as a foundation. Now, back to testing in blacks and the like. Lots of people talk about Tuskegee and so on and so forth. My point is simply this: I don't think it's. I looked at the data from FACC, published in the New England Journal. They published. I think the median age was 52 of the people that they tested. There was no significant deaths in the placebo or the vaccine group. Nobody died. It was 0-0 gain. So yes, there were, I think in Pfizer, there was 69 people that contracted coronavirus in the placebo group compared to 9 in the vaccine group. That's out of, I think, 18,000 in both groups.
Okay.
So out of 18,000 people in this study, 69 who got no virus, 69 out of 8, that's a very small percentage. 9 is a smaller percentage. So they say, okay, 9 is significantly smaller than 69, so that's the 95% efficacy that they came up with. But there was a small number of people, and most of those were mild infections. There were only 10 people total that had a severe enough infection to go to the hospital. 9 in the placebo group and 1 in the vaccine group.
Do you remember the time frame they were talking about?
They looked at over 2 months. It wasn't very
2
long.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't. But the point I'm making is this: the data now, that's not discussing other data that was left out. They presented more data to the FDA. There was a group of people that on both sides that had infection who were not confirmed COVID. They left that data out. If you include that data, some people analyzed it, said that the efficacy is even lower. I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about what they published, because what they published is the best foot forward data. The best foot forward data shows no survival benefit. And so that's important to understand. The best foot forward data shows that, yes, it's safe for over 2 months, but we didn't look further. Right. And we're not going to know further, because my understanding is that the individuals in the placebo group are going to get the vaccine after another few months. So you're not going to have a placebo going forward. So you won't know long-term benefits, side effects on this study based on vaccine, because everybody's going to have the vaccine.
That seems a little rigged to me.
That's the best, but even the if you want to say it's rigged, fine. You want to say, but that's the best foot forward data, and at the very least, I will say it showed no survival benefit.
Right.
And I would argue also that they targeted the wrong group, because the group you should target is the median age of people dying from 81, around 80.
Right.
That's the group you should have targeted.
Yeah.
In the study. They did. And so same with so that's. So, yeah, they tested in Africa. They tested one group there. But even with that data and, having tested it other places, whether you agree with the testing or not, and many people argue, because for a long time there was an argument, Big Pharma, wasn't adequately representing women, blacks, Hispanics in a lot of the studies. And so the drugs that were, came out with were based on white men. And so the argument is that, well, they should test more blacks, and so I think that could be the argument in favor of doing that with this drug, and so they're trying to be more equitable. So maybe that's a well-meaning attempt, but be that as it may, the tests are done. The findings do not show survival benefit, and that's really what you want to show evidence.
Yeah.
There's evidence that does show survival benefit. And so there's lots of evidence here. Now, my colleague Joe Verone knows more about that than I do. I've looked at some of the data, enough for me to say, yes, I'll use it in my patient population. But it's been shown to be beneficial prophylactically, early treatment, and also late treatment. And if you ask me, again, my promotion is natural, plant-based life, et cetera. But if there's a pharmacological answer to this, I would say you should line people up and distribute tablets. That's been shown to be beneficial.
Wow.
So even if I'm here and I'm Mr. Big Pharma, I would argue that in favor of, well, so then why would I argue it's one, it's been distributed worldwide for about 40 years or more, about 3.7 billion doses. There've only about 16 associated deaths, quote unquote, in that period of time, that number of distributions. They've done studies where you give very large doses of it, and they've found it to be safe at industrialized doses. So you say, well, why not give? It's FDA approved. It's listed on the World Health Organization's one of its essential drugs worldwide. It's normally used to treat worms, scabies and gut worms, but it's been shown to be efficacious against viruses. There's one major side effect of that's why it's not being promoted. It doesn't make money for big pharmacists. And so it's going to be suppressed. You mentioned remdesivir. They don't remdesivir is really that it doesn't work, but yet Gilead makes a lot of money. I think they made over $1 billion selling it to Europe. It's on the treatment protocol here. A friend of mine had an aunt in a New York hospital, and remdesivir is part of their treatment protocol. Steroids. Steroids has some benefit in late treatment, but we tried to get them to start on. She refused. She died.
Wow. That's crazy. It seems like there's just a lot of complacency and not a lot of actually critical thinking going on.
What's very, very, very alarming about is that there's another chemical here similar in name to that they talk about, and they also discuss. I think they call it commissive. Let me look at it.
So the antiviral.
It's an antiviral, and they've actually published example tweets of people talking for and against the drug, and how the public should respond to it, and how the government agencies should respond to it.
And
I need to look at that.
To go along,
this thing is creepy, dude.
Yeah, to go along with that though, one of the hashtags that they plan for is #natural is better. And to that, I'm like, wow, they're really worried about this.
How are they going to counter #natural is better, so we know how to counter the counter?
Yeah,
Look,
right.
and this is all hypothetical. This clip was widely shared across the United States with a variety of captions, including "No calosivir." That's their version. Calosivir.
Okay.
And natural is better. The hashtag, in turn, provided a way for people sharing these views to find one another and band together on social media. They formed ZapQ and other online discussion groups, which allowed them to receive any message from group members via smartphones and internet accessing technologies. Why are they so detailed about it?
It's like Telegram.
Is this at Johns Hopkins?
This is Johns Hopkins.
ZapQ.
This is
That
Johns
is-
Hopkins Center for Health Security, and I have the
SPARS pandemic.
And it's an interesting time frame too. I mean, 2025 to 2028.
yeah.
Obviously, we're a little ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I also have the official Indian Parliament investigation on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The original reason why that foundation was kicked out in 2013. Because they found that there was a lot of injuries.
A lot of the girls were becoming,
a lot of girls, thousands.
And there was really no consent, or the consent was muddied, etc.
Send that to me.
August 2013, 72nd report from the Parliament of India.
Yeah,
So that goes to the details of that.
It goes through the details of that. And this document was difficult to find. Even on the official India Parliament website, it's been expunged. There's only mentions of it. So I had to find a Google Drive link that somebody random had posted about it.
Amazing. Send me that. Send me that.
Yes.
I mean, we got to circulate. I don't know. There needs to be, this is a very interesting conversation, and we, if we don't get assassinated, we probably need to go with other people together to have.
I'm not terribly worried about assassination, and I'll tell you why. The good news is that there's at least a few thousand people who have these documents.
Gotcha. Okay.
So for them to wipe us all out, you can go ahead and try if you want.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not
Okay.
too worried about it.
But no, we probably need to have, let me give some thought to this, because I may want to put together like a little roundtable discussion among some of the people, colleagues, maybe in the house or office, and kind of look at some of this.
I would love that, because I would dare to say, and I'm not even mentioning the highly sensitive material that I have that I shouldn't, I'm not going to mention, but we can talk about it.
Off record, that'd be good.
But the round table will be important. There have been efforts on doing this before. Andrew Kaufman, right?
Yep.
Is a biologist, right?
Yeah.
And he had a round table of 150 medical specialists.
Sorry, let's specify that. That was Rashid Buttar.
Oh, Rashid Buttar.
Who I do have a couple critiques of, but Dr. Rashid Buttar had on this platform called London Real, had a roundtable Zoom call with over 150 doctors, all at the same time, live, who, basically you're saying, I have problems with the general narrative that is being spun. I have experience treating people in these ways, etc.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if we can organize a roundtable of that sort here in Houston, because this is a medical center of the world.
Yeah.
We can do that, and yes, we'll put our heads together.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Also,
maybe a series of round tables to put together.
if you're okay with it, it's about 2:30, and want to not take up all your time, so maybe this is a good place to close.
Yeah,
you make the call. I'm
And,
having
and
a good time.
And then we can get into some other stuff before you leave.
Yeah.
Sure.
So everybody, thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 41 with Dr. Baxter Montgomery. It is an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
It was an absolute honor. We already had our channel removed once. We fought it, and we won. And guess what? If this happens again, it's just more reason to really dig your nose into some of this material, guys, because, we knew about a year and a half ago, the sentiment of this entire country towards propagandization and the news just in general was very low. And the polls, the official polls, I believe they were referred to as the Gallup polls, demonstrated a historic low approval of our media. And in 1 year's time, they have unilaterally switched the sentiment of the people. And I think that in and of itself should be alarming. The fact that there is a massive effort to censor and purge the internet of a lot of these sources is extremely alarming. So I hope you guys will be in the fight with us, because we don't want to lose grasp of the truth. We have one lifetime to find out the most we can about this world and how to live healthy and how to live true. So with that, we'll see you guys later. We'll link all of Professor Montgomery's information in the description. We'll see you guys next time on 3, 1, 2,